Well, I did think that this was interesting when I initially pitched the podcast idea, and then Lauren, you said, like, is there anything that you want to that I want to chat about, anything to prepare for?
Yeah.
And then you said it might be worth discussing the fact that we all came to stand up a little later in life.
Yeah.
Which I thought was an interesting thing. So
Because I thought when Sarah was coming in, I was like, well, I know Sarah and I both started very late. I can't speak for Nicolette, but I thought.
Oh, in earnest, I didn't start until my late 20s.
Yeah.
Like,
which I think can be quite late in the game.
Yeah, I don't feel like we went through that like class clowns, raw comedy.
No.
Well, I assume, and we were all actors first.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
But Lauren, you're saying quite late. What is quite late to you? And
I was 35.
Yeah.
Which I felt was quite late.
Mm.
And I mean, considering where I am in my career now, I look at my peers in terms of, you know, kind of where we sit in the grand scheme of things. And a lot of people that I have come up with are much, much younger than me.
Yeah.
And I'm in a lot of group chats with comics who make references I have no idea what they're talking about.
Is it a way to maybe exclude you? Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, maybe I'm being bullied and I don't know.
They're waiting for you to exit the group chat.
Maybe. Oh, that's upsetting.
But I think that age isn't a thing in comedy. Well, this sounds, if you were just to use that as a soundbite, it wouldn't be fair. But more the idea that, like, when you start, now you're in grade one sort of thing. It's like when you're starting year, you are now a baby comedian, no matter your age.
I still feel like a baby in many ways.
Because, you know, a few examples off the top of my head, Lizzie Who, Luke Heggie, both friends of the pod who started comedy around 35 as well. So what I'm here to say is there's hope for you yet.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, Nicolette, did you feel like starting, you say starting in earnest. What does in earnest look like?
Well, I was in a sketch duo first. So I feel like, which lots of people start in a group scenario as well, whether it's like an improv group or whatever else.
Ways,
so I was in a sketch duo for a while.
What was the sketch duo
It's
called?
called Girls Uninterrupted.
And was girls with a Z or?
No, I just say it like that because it was the
very
it was
brat to say it
the
like
girl. It was girl interrupted. So it became, it was like the play, so then it became Girls Uninterrupted. Which, of course, the reason that I was so hard on the S was because reviewers would call us Girl Uninterrupted. There were two of us.
They can't even count.
And that was, we started with a split bill show for a comedy festival, and then we went into doing sketch stuff because we had undeniable chemistry. And now we don't really talk.
I did notice you had mentioned their name, so I was like, all right.
No, it was Louise McRae. But they've gone on to different things and didn't. And then off the back of that, I did my first ever solo show, and then I took a 7-year break.
Stunning.
It was that good or that bad?
Oh, I think other work came up. I ended up turning my attention to screenwriting for a bit, and I just didn't have the drive within me to the compulsion. You have to feel. Yes. I just think. It has to be a compulsion.
Yes.
And it has to kind of be a
Compulsion is a good
hunger that
word.
you need to.
You have to. It's like a sickness to me.
Yeah.
Like you've been infected.
Yeah.
And you can't get rid of it.
Yeah, and that does happen around the comedy scene pretty regularly.
Yeah, there is
Literally
rife with all kinds of things that you can.
No, I was the
contract.
same as you. I started off in musical comedy, so I wasn't a stand-up in earnest until I was almost 37. So I sort of slowly kind of melded into the stand-up world. So
Yeah. See,
I did a lot of duo stuff, a lot of two-handers.
But isn't it funny too that we sort of are thinking about, I mean, stand-up specifically, but we do put the solo show on a pedestal of like, oh, I haven't, like, because this is what the narrative sounds like, is that my comedy hasn't really started until I'm doing it by myself.
Yeah, which I don't agree with really. I personally, I miss doing two-handers and working with other actors. Like,
I think it's coming back in a big way as well, that idea of feeling like, oh, I'm going to do a split bill. I'm going to do, even though I've done a solo, I'm going to do a split bill because...
Solo's a hard work, man.
Exactly.
Like, why would you want to kill yourself every year to do it if you could do it with another person?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I just love not having to be reliant on somebody else, and not in a way that's like, doesn't work well in groups. I do, but. And I love a collaborative experience.
Same.
And that's why I think we've both had the experience of working with directors, but
Yes.
I love that experience of it feeling like a book club and we're all kind of working together to this environment really.
Yeah.
But yes, it's infinitely more. It's much easier to sell tickets if there's two of you trying to shift the same number of seats,
Yes.
or more of you trying to shift the same number of seats.
And
I
also,
think
if you can't shift the seats, you've got someone to commiserate with.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I enjoy that
you
a
have
lot.
someone
Or someone to blame. It's like, did you not tell any of your friends?
Yeah,
that
totally. You'd be like, it wasn't me. It was Nicolette.
Yeah,
I'm working with you because you do social netball. I thought you would bring the whole team.
yeah. But I think now I don't know. I like the freedom, but it's harder. It's infinitely harder to convince. And I remember even just when we were relatively unknown, like we ended up doing 4 shows together. We got a really good review one year, which meant that we kind of just flew, and got picked up by the ABC to do a little interstitial bit of broadcasting as well one year. So it felt like there was plenty. Basically, Girls Uninterrupted started at the same time as Auntie Donna. Like we did our same shows at the same.
Stunning.
Yeah, we launched in the same comedy festival.
And where are they now? Are they still going?
Who are we talking about? Who's that?
I picked it.
Are they another all-female sketch group?
That's it.
Annie
It's
Donna.
a shame.
Yeah, it
I
sounds
reckon
like
if
it.
they were female, they probably would have done better. So, but yeah, I found that people were willing to take a punt on someone if there was like 2. And they went, oh, well, if we don't like one, we might not.
Totally.
I never thought about that.
Yeah,
Sort of polarize
definitely.
the audiences as quickly.
People love a showcase. People love that feeling.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I also thought?
It's like splitting your bets basically
Totally.
from a gambling
Well,
point of view.
Sarah and I did a show together in 2023, and I remember someone said to us, like, I don't usually see a lot of comedy because I get nervous in comedy shows, and I think there's something for an audience member that I didn't realize is that there's a little bit of comfort there, because if there's 2 people on stage, I guess they're more likely to talk to each other than talk to you. Because you know how people can get really, anxious that the comedian's going to pick on them. If there's 2 people on stage, I think there's a weird level of like perceived safety.
Yeah, less responsibility all of a
there's
sudden.
a storyline, so there's something happening that they don't have to be a part of, I guess.
Exactly. Well, we're here to chat jokes today, which is exciting. Tell me what's in the pipeline for you both. Are you both working towards new shows next festival season?
Yeah, I haven't announced a new show yet, but it's coming.
Does it overwhelm you as much as me seeing all of the, because like of course we follow so many comedians that we have a flood, and like I feel like a normal person wouldn't have such a flood on their social feed of tour announcements, but
No,
each one
God,
I'm
no.
seeing at the moment, I'm overwhelmed, and I'm not even doing a show.
I kind of love it. I feel like it's like an advent calendar. Every day there's a new one to unwrap, because I'm really love interesting visuals. So I really enjoy when people like launch their hero image or their poster. I'm
You
like,
love
oh,
colour
that's
and
sick.
movement.
I do. I'm like a bowerbird. Like I just love shiny, cute things. I'm into it. So yeah.
And there are a lot of impressive posters, because typically the people who are announcing their tours this early are people with fancy management and stuff. So we're seeing some
Funny you
fancy
should say that.
posters.
I've announced my show, but I have no fancy management.
But you have an impressive,
I have a great poster. I'm
impressive
very happy with
poster
it.
and
Thank
beautiful photography by our friend Chris Hillary.
Correct. Yes. So
And
I'm
Stanley, of course.
yes, and my dog is in it, so it's a very special.
Yeah, credit to the
one for me.
dog.
Yeah.
Well,
Credit
I
to
mean,
the
he
dog.
sells
Full
it.
credit to the
It's
dogs.
his show as much as it is mine.
So what do you know about your show so far?
Well, the show is called Chihuahua, and it is not about dogs, and it is about being yappy. So it's just, look, this is, as I said before, I come from musical comedy, so I have sort of slowly transitioned away from it. And last year was my first real, just unadulterated stand-up show, but it did have a bit of a narrative. Whereas this year, this is my first go at doing straight stand-up with no real through line, just a 50-minute show of me chatting and yapping about things that make me either very angry or very happy.
And is that, have you seen that as like a deliberate thing, as almost like a goal, an objective to go, I'm proud of it not having a narrative.
it
Because for me to hear that, I'm like, oh, I like there to be a through line.
Well, look, there's a very light through line, but
okay.
it's not a narrative. I mean, and it wasn't a goal of mine. I just more that, I shouldn't admit this on a podcast for comedians, but I more than anything, I've had a massive year, and I got to the end, sort of, the August, September, when you start to formulate what you're going to do for the next year. And I sort of was coming up a bit blank in terms of something interesting or something with, a compelling, something that had enough to take me through an hour of material.
And for the listener, we're seeing a lot of arm thrusts happening right now. Yeah.
And I thought, what if, I'd been coming up with a few bits here and there, and none of them were really particularly related. And then I thought, well, my whole brand as a comedian anyway is how I've got opinions about everything. So why don't I just make that kind of the through line, and then that takes the pressure off of me having to worry about, really sticking to a particular structure without it looking too structured and, all that sort of stuff. But don't worry, there's still a theme through it, but there's no storyline.
Yeah, well, I guess
I'm
this
just
is my
lazy is what I'm saying.
Well, I guess this is what I'll say to every comedian listening, or the people that describe their show by what it isn't.
Yeah.
Because that comes up a lot. Yeah. It's like, hey, it's not about chihuahuas and it doesn't have a through line and it's not this and it's not that. But I want to hear what it is.
Yeah.
So and because what we've discovered right now, when you then develop the thought a little bit further, was it is a thing, and almost like its lack of thing will be its thing.
Yes.
So anytime we have that temptation to go, here's what it isn't, is going, well, no, I'll as the audience member, I will tell you what it is, because maybe like a magic eye puzzle, when I take a few steps back, the whole thing has been about a chihuahua, and the fact that you told me it isn't, I'm like, how could you?
But also I think it's important when you're writing, and I need to remind myself of this too, not to marry yourself too closely to something you think it should be, because particularly at this point, I'm just trying to write stuff I think is funny and that actually brings out an emotion in me, whether that be rage or joy or whatever, and then just letting that sort of come out, and then figuring out what the show actually is a bit later down the track, as opposed to shoehorning it into something that I think it should be.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And then I guess what I'd fight you on is like, therefore not saying what it isn't going to be as well.
Yeah.
Like, right, okay, I don't want to force it down what it is, and also let's not say what it isn't, because what if it does become a beautiful narrative piece?
I mean, what if it does? I'm not opposed to it. I certainly didn't set out to just definitely not do a storyline. That wasn't my intention. It was more that I'm just going to take the pressure off myself and not worry about it if I don't have one.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I had a thought, and it may be escaping my brain. Hey, Nicolette, before we hear about your show, I thought let's make sure we're throwing some jokes as I'm forming the narrative for this very episode. Here's what I'm doing.
I'm here for the ride. Let's go.
Listen, you tell me what my show should be about. I'm cool.
Hey, I'll tell you. I got thoughts already. More Chihuahua, please.
Don't worry, there's Chihuahua in it. If you want me to tell you what it is, there is Chihuahua content in it. Don't worry.
And also, give it also enough to satisfy the 1 or 2 people who are coming, or the 200 people who are coming for Chihuahua content.
I love that your first response was 1 or 2 people who are coming. How dare you?
No, 1 or 2 people who are Chihuahua fans, I guess.
I suspect you have a huge audience in Chihuahua owners.
Yes.
Or
give them
admirers.
enough. Give them enough Chihuahua
also
stuff.
too, because my dog particularly, I'm quite lucky. I say this all the time. I have a small, very small, modest yet loyal online following, who have become particularly attached to my dog.
Yeah.
And I think knowing that there's going to be material in there about him specifically is quite a draw card for a lot of people. So but yes, Chihuahua owners are very...
Here I am, I'm banning you from saying it's not about Chihuahua.
No, it's not about dogs in general. It's not a dog show. As
your informal creative producer, that's what I'm here to do. I'm protective of my comedy writers group members. I'm protective. So let's talk about jokes. I am not working on a show for next year, but I'm trying to make sure that I'm keeping that balloon aloft. I'm trying to make sure that I'm still working those particular muscles. A few weeks ago, I did a headline spot at my room in Sydney that I book. How does he get these rooms?
How does he do it?
You book
baby.
Yourself as the headliner. You have to travel to Sydney to do it, so it's a bit of a challenge.
Sure.
I then dug into some of my older stuff. I wanted to do a little bit of I flew over here today type stuff, which you can get away with, I think, a little bit more if you've got like room to play. It's like, okay, I've got 20 minutes in this headline spot. I'm going to do a little bit of I flew over here and here's an anecdote from the plane trip. And my anecdote was fine, But I thought I might also attach an older bit that's also an airport story to it to just sort of flesh it out a little bit, maybe give an ending to it. So I'm going to share this with you without too much baggage, mind the pun, and see what you think. Please. So I was at the baggage carousel and that part of the flight, you get off the flight, you're like, okay, I'm feeling a little gassy. I don't know what triggered it, but it's time. It's time. I'm in the baggage collection area. This is a time where there's plenty of people around. I can get away with farting in public in this zone. So I did a fart, pretty quiet. It wasn't going to attract too much attention. I think as well, maybe I had a little bit of headphone hubris, when you do a fart with headphones and you're not totally monitoring, how much sound is coming out. And you're also hoping for the best, that it's not going to be too smelly. Fingers crossed situation. As soon as I fart, though, a guy turns around, looks at me, or looks in my general vicinity and goes like, oh, does a little bit of the, I can't remember exactly what phrase he used, who dropped their guts might have been it, or someone's farted, might be very straightforward classic.
To the point.
With eye contact?
Generally, I'm in his cone of view, let's say. Okay. Yeah. And right when I'm sort of looking a little scarlet-faced, about to maybe, either avoid his eyes, I'm trying to think about, oh my God, what am I going to do? Am I going to shrug? Am I going to own this? Am I going to pretend I didn't hear anything? An older woman behind me turns around and she says, "It was me." And she claims ownership of my fart. And I let her take it. Like, I wasn't going to go, no, it was my fart. She stands up. She does a little bit of I'm farticus sort of action, and she claims the fart. And before you know it, everyone around the carousel starts claiming the fart, and they say, no, I'm farticus. And it comes back around the carousel back to me, because now everyone's now looking back, because everyone's tried to be the person. And I was take my bags and leave, because I'm not disgusting. Nicolette's now looking at me as if what part of this is true. Yeah. So the part that is true is that she claimed the fart, and then I just sort of wander off. But the joy that I had was the farticus thing.
It's a great word.
My question to you. So this is a joke that I did like a couple of years ago in Darwin, which was, here's something that occurred to me on the flight, and all I've got at the moment is farticus, have that audience. And then that joke just falls off rotation pretty quickly, because it doesn't have the staying power, the stickiness that some new jokes might, when you're like, oh, there's something that keep the gravitational pull.
Just and like some farts. Yeah. The ones that grab you under the nose. Yeah.
And I'm not really a quote unquote toilet humor comedian.
No.
But I like old movies. I like Spartacus. I like a reference. But what I don't think I have here, what I'm intrigued to know from you, is if you think that this joke is worth developing, or seeing if there's anything left to discover, or if it is just a cheap fart story. Because what I don't have at the moment is any reflections. There's no depth to it. It is just, here's the pun, see you later.
So,
please.
Did it feel like a Hunger Games scenario? Like, was she volunteering as tribute, or do you suspect that you both actually farted? I
suspect that it's probably a very common occurrence to get to baggage carousel and go,
See, I disagree. When you started telling me this story, immediately I was like, everybody knows you fart on the plane. That is the deal.
Yeah, it's a tube of farts in the air.
I wasn't holding any farts.
Yeah, but like, plain food is purposely made a certain way to stop you from going to the toilet, so that 270 people aren't lining up for 3 cubicles at the same time, and so you get a lot of gas, and you're meant to let it out in the plane because the atmosphere is completely different.
That's what the bag is for.
It sucks it up. So you said before that you have, what'd you call it? Your
headphone hubris.
Headphone hubris. I think combine headphone hubris with on plane hubris, like you could let it rip.
Yeah, that's true. I mean? Yeah, we are sort of giving a lot to like the absorbing quality of the airplane seat.
Yeah. But my question would be, when she admitted to the fart, when she took that moment from you, when she threw herself on the sword, did people look at her funny? Did they judge her? Like, did you?
Or did everyone just move on?
Yeah.
Yeah, they just moved on.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, no one really gives a shit. But the anxiety from me comes back to like school, the classroom setting, as if you ever farted in a classroom and someone, you know, points you out and goes, oh, Marcel farted. Like, that was terrifying. And like, so for me, I've got a lot of fart shame still. When I hear about those couples that have like fart pride, you know, those couples who are like farting in front of their partners with like abandon. Like, I'm not excusing myself to fart, but I'm never like, hey, honey, rate
Check
this.
this out.
Yeah.
Pull
Which
my
I
finger
find,
kind of thing. No,
which I find
do
very
that.
disturbing. It's like, you have intimate moments with this person, and you're also, I find that sort of stuff very disturbing.
Well, I mean, look, here's my next question for you, because I mean, this might be a bit too far, but because if you're all going to claim a fart like that, if it's going to go round the circle,
Was it worth claiming?
Was it worth like, what does a fart have to smell like to have 25 people put their name on it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Is there a particular brand of fart that people aren't afraid to put their hand up for? Because I think there are different types.
Yeah, it felt like the kind of Slim Shady moment. Like
Yeah.
I was,
Well, the rules, Slim Shady rules.
they're all Slim Shady.
Please
like-
stand up.
Yeah.
I listened to that song yesterday.
Thank you for your honesty.
I know my audience. Yeah, it's like, who wants to?
Yeah.
I suppose if I wanted to build in, because I think what's lacking here in terms of my taste is there's not very strong emotion in this. That's sort of giving this a foundation. It's a thin tail.
I've not that this is like Old Man in the Pool, which is a really niche Mike Birbiglia reference, but is it what do you admire in her to be able to go, it was me?
Yeah, she's my hero. Yeah, I haven't made her a character, have I?
No.
Yeah.
And I think you can afford to.
Do you remember her from being on the plane?
No, but I can invent.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Like, give us, I want to know, who is she? Is she older than you?
Because she was a motherly type. She would have been in like her 60s or something like that. She had that sort of vibe of, and she looked very just sort of casual in it. Like she took it in her stride,
It's
you
like
know?
that women in male fields trend, like, because like she's taking credit she's doing what men have done to women for centuries.
That's really funny, taking credit for it.
so
Like that I could go from like excited that she's taken, like I'm impressed that she's stood up, and then go, hey, wait a minute. That was
You know
my
what?
fart.
I'm going to take credit for this bozo's fart because fuck the patriarchy. Are we allowed to swear on this, by the way?
I
Thank
find
you.
that very funny. The idea that that I don't know if there's anything in that for you, but the idea that it's
She was just doing a bit for gender equality.
Yeah, I think that's very funny.
Look, and I think you probably would agree, but for girls, I think, or women, I think the fart thing is even touchier, because I remember being in school, and boys sometimes, if they just wanted to upset you, they would just say you farted even though you didn't. And I was mortified about that.
And you're committed to that, aren't you? You're like, I did not fart.
I did not fart, absolutely did not. But I think for me now, I don't know if this is worth anything, but I'm like, if a fart really smells bad, then I definitely don't want to be pinned with it, even if it was me. But if it is a great sound, I'll take it. Like if we were in this room and I accidentally let one go and it made a great like sound, I'd be like, that was me. 100%.
And also you have to, but also if it makes a big sound, like you have to
have
own
to.
that. You
Yeah,
can't be
you
like,
have
nah,
to.
that wasn't. Like that's
Yeah,
proper
it's harder.
gaslighting the whole room,
Yeah,
and
that's
gas
right.
with a capital G.
a capital G.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think if you can, because the pun is great, but I think the pun can work harder for you if you attribute this person as being some kind of warrior on behalf of others.
Totally.
Gender.
Yeah,
Like,
build to it.
whether it's a gender thing or whether it's like the lesson that they give you is, and I think I would be looking at her with
Yes,
admiration.
So would I.
Yeah, I think at the moment the bit just fades out, which leads to those moments where people go, "Oh, I don't have a punchline for that yet,"
I think
or
you could
anyway.
frame it as
yeah.
like a feminist, a feminist that through the female gaze kind of joke.
How do I give more weight to this fart? Can I give weight to gas? What is the
This
weight?
is exactly what I was hoping we would talk about.
Same.
Well, Nicolette, tell me about your upcoming show, and let's talk about some jokes.
I'm taking a previous show. So I'm going to Adelaide. I'm taking my show from last year called Boardroom, which is
Great poster, by the way.
Thank you so much. Shout out to Sarah Walker, photographer, who helped me conceptualized that one. And that, for those who don't know, is a kind of horror comedy hybrid. So I had been screenwriting horror films and writing stand-up comedy and was like, there's got to be a world in which I can combine these two. So that
Can you tell us a little about the screenwriting of horror films?
Yeah, sure. So I come, like, as we've talked about, come from a background as an actor, and then I've been screenwriting for about 10 or 12 years.
That's amazing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I just feel...
Have you finished anything?
I have finished. Things have been produced.
That's a worthwhile question, Tom.
Otherwise, I wouldn't bother to mention it. I have the maturity not to. So I have one film has been produced called Girl at the Window, and the way that came about was that I was approached to do what's called an additional dialogue pass or additional material pass, which lots of people do in the light entertainment space. Lots of people do in features. It's done a lot more in the States. You'll see that, you know, a film has multiple writers on it. They haven't all sat in the same room and written on it. No. They have literally
using the same keyboard, ghost
same
style.
Draft, totally. So I was asked to come on and do an additional dialogue pass on that, and then I ended up doing more, and then, as fate would have it, was awarded this classic female. And then they were just so lucky that they gave me I earned a co-write credit on that, and that film was produced in 2022. I want to say, so it hit. We actually had a theatrical release, which was
it called?
It's called Girl at the Window.
Is that the one where the person's on the train and looks in the window?
It's so
The girl
funny
on
you
the
say
train.
that, because there's a little bit of discourse around the title of the film, and the US sales agents. It had a different name. I didn't name it. It's not my story.
Yeah.
I didn't name it, but the US sales agents were like, yeah, ideally it does sound like all of those other films.
Because then there was also a parody version as well,
wanted to
wasn't
sound
there?
like that. Yeah, that makes
It was.
I don't
Was it the
know
parody
enough of that.
version?
There was woman at the corner of the world of looking through the window on the other side of the
wearing a
street.
pearl
And you didn't.
earring
Yeah,
or
you didn't do
something.
that
Yeah, I
one.
think
No.
I've seen that.
So look,
Have you thought about putting a Z after girl?
Yeah, I know that's exactly what we should have done.
Girls at the window.
But it's a really good indication of like, and the reason that I talk about it is that's work being a jobbing writer. Like it's not always your idea. It's not always your
glam.
gig. And I think.
But also, I know that I also want to just footnote how quickly like comedians go into like being like roasting the idea, but it's also like, oh, that's super cool. That's really great.
No,
Yeah.
but that's, what I'm saying is like I think you've got to be open to the idea that it's not always going to be your project or the kernel of whatever it is that you're working on. And I think it's really important to be like, well, how else can I work in this world and learn? And
I love not being in charge sometimes. Like I love doing co-writing with people that doesn't have my name on it, because it means I can play a bit more, and if it's shit, it doesn't
Totally.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's freeing.
Yeah. So what it meant that I got to then do was take all of that experience that I learnt working in that genre, and go, there's got to be a world in which these two can coexist, these two interests. And I might be wrong about it, but I'm willing and brave enough to find out. So Boardroom came about from a job that I actually did when I lived, a temp job that I did in London in 2012, where I was a catering assistant, but effectively what I was a tea lady. And I put biscuits on plates, and I would sit in the basement level of an otherwise abandoned building, wait for the phone to ring, take the biscuits and the cups of tea up to the top floor boardroom, leave them there, get back in the lift, go all the way down to the bottom where there was no phone reception, and wait for the phone to ring to tell me to come and collect the plates. And at the same time that I was doing that, I was doing a stand-up course. So I was in this kind of echo chamber of what is this weird semi-severance type existence where I don't see another living person.
And how long did you do the job for?
I can't answer that question because I don't
I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe you are
Sure,
still
yeah.
doing it.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that I became so
It's
obsessed.
wild.
Yeah, it's really wild.
Yeah.
So that's what that show is. But so I'm taking that to Adelaide for the first time, even though I took it to Melbourne and Sydney this year. It'll go to Adelaide, and then a week later I open a new show.
Yeah,
I've
that's
never
a lot.
done
That's a
that.
lot
I've
to
never
carry the two shows at
Yeah,
at
I've
once.
never
Yeah.
had two shows in my head at the same time.
It is really hard.
So, but to answer your question, the next show is called Rising Damp.
Great.
No VCAT references at all. It has nothing to do.
Look how we've quickly gone to here's what the show isn't as well.
I did it. But I'd like to think I do that in a don't worry, it's
Yeah.
not about the about property. No, Rising Damp is all about, it's my midlife show. It's all about how I've reached a point in my life where I think I turned 41 this year. I have a beautiful 3.5-year-old little boy who took us a long time to have through IVF, took up a lot of time, a lot of brain space. And for me, being in my 40s, going from this existence of, in your 20s and your 30s, there's a lot of what if, and now finally being a parent, now doing what I love, now everything's turned a bit more to what now. So
also a good title. But where does Rising Damp come from?
Rising Damp comes from, I developed a mild obsession with swimming. So in the lead up to my 41st birthday, I decided I would swim 41 kilometres in the 41-day lead up to turning 41, and I want to know why. I want to know why that was so important to me. Was it just the attention? Was it for me, it was so much more than kind of fitness, and there was a sense, just this need to kind of push myself in directions physically, and I don't know if it was empowering or a form of avoidance. And I also just happened to have a whole heap of stories about toilet training my child, and I just started to
You can
find
say it's one of the most moist shows of the festival.
There was just a lot of
very wet.
there was just a lot
when
of
Comedy Festival does those list shows of
damp
different
chat,
categories.
wet shows.
yeah, this
wet
is gonna
shows.
be a very damp show.
Because people do come to the box office and they go, what's around in terms of like wet
comedy,
wet comedy coming up? Yeah.
Because look, there's lots of comics out there who are very dry.
That's
exactly,
true.
right?
And you could be this year's wet comic.
I feel like alt is I feel like alt comedy.
Alt is the big word this year, I think.
But I feel like alt comedy is often the
Soggy.
the wet,
Yeah.
the wet comedy.
I
don't know. I'm not an alt comic, so I don't want to speak for the community.
I've tried. It doesn't suit me.
No. Also, I would, and not to jump off your idea, but I think what you said about your show is actually the same as mine. I think my show is my midlife show too.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, they'll all be midlife shows from this point.
And I got to
ideally.
say as well, it sounds like there might be a narrative.
There's absolutely a narrative. Yeah. So that the journey is she gonna be able to do the swim? Is she going to be able to get through it? But it has, Boardroom was a play, whereas this for me is really much heavier in as far as its stand-up is concerned. But, all of the stand-ups have some kind of evaporative ability, I suppose. Like literally is
More
like,
into
but
moisture. I like
is
it.
it wet? Yep, this is a wet joke. This is a wet joke.
Can all the seats in the room also be damp before people arrive?
Spoiler
There
alert.
you go.
Or after, depending on how sexy the show is.
Ideally.
Yeah.
Hyperhidrosis, just thinking about it.
Nicolette, tell us a specific thing that you want to share
So,
today.
I discovered recently, and this is not yet anything. This is really just a really fun observation that I've discovered. And my into it was learning about AI. So, and I know I'm not the first comic to talk about AI, but I was doing a bit of research as to how the algorithms actually work in order to generate the content that you're asking them to do. And you give them an instruction and they go away and they do it and it comes back. But I discovered that during the process, and for anybody who actually knows about how AI works, I just want to apologise in advance for being so reductive.
Or for any AIs listening.
Correct,
Yeah.
in which there's definitely a few.
Not to cause offence. Anyway.
That it works with two algorithms, and one of them, the first algorithm generates what you're asking it to do, and the second algorithm comes on top of that and criticises it and looks for problems, errors, things that are unbelievable, that don't work. And I was chatting to somebody who works in that field, and they said, yeah, if you think you have anxiety, AI has 1 billion times more anxiety. And I started to think about the idea that they're not only the robots coming for our jobs, but they're also coming for our mental health plans. And just this image of like me walking around the house, looking for my Lexapro, and it's gone missing, and there's just the robot vacuum just like bobbling up. And there's just a nationwide, SSRI shortage because all of the machines are just kind of sentient
And they're being overworked, they're just constantly on the clock.
constantly.
Yeah.
And then that for me moved into this space of like an anxious Terminator. Like I'll be back, or will I? Does it even matter? Get to the chopper, no worries if not. So just playing in this space where, and just to give you, and at this point I go, well, how would this exist in the world, or is this just going to be a bit that sits out of that, sits out of my show? But there's also chat about how ChatGPT and all of the AI servers use every water. And
That's why I don't use AI, because
We're back to wet comedy.
So much water.
Literally wet.
A single conversation with, and what I've started to discover about my comedy, sorry, this will start to be like a learning and me of self-reflection.
This is what we're here
is
for.
that a lot of my comedy is information and anecdotes. Like how I've gone, like I will often info dump, and I will start to go, this is something that I learned and here's how it applies to my life. And I'm really starting to embrace that, because I love going, this is something that I read and I found really interesting. And when I say read, I did actually read it. I mean, at least I Googled something until it confirmed my confirmation bias. But, I do occasionally read beyond just kind of TikTok captions.
Which I think is a beautiful thing, because I think some people will either share a news story or they'll share a fun fact, but then not think too deeply in terms of how it applies to them. They'll go, here's Spartacus, the end. And you go, yeah, but what about, give us some depth and how it applies to uniquely you.
Yeah, so I think I've started, so with the ChatGPT, so to bring us back to what that is, for people who don't know, they use an inordinate amount of water to cool the servers. So it's an air conditioning scenario. In fact, apparently a single conversation with ChatGPT will use 500 ml of water. She's, for those who are listening,
needs a full
she's
Stanley
lifting.
cup.
Like you mean to tell me that ChatGPT is also drinking more water than me?
That makes me think of the huge water bottles that the girlies have got these days.
Completely.
Yeah, because they need their. So the robots need both their Lexapro and their enormous Stanley water bottles.
And the robots are probably getting more air conditioning than like the typical Amazon worker or something like that. You go, oh, can we get the air cooler a little cooler in here? No.
Totally.
So
What do you
all of
think this
that
is?
I just find like fascinating
Yeah.
and alarming. And I don't like I love that also, that the idea behind AI processing the way in which things are programmed is to emulate the patterns in the human brain, and that no matter how hard you try, it will fall apart.
Yes.
Like
Anxiety is like inevitable.
yeah.
Get hot on that mic, Lauren. Get hot on that mic.
Sorry.
So that's,
I don't want these hot takes to be missed.
Anxiety
That's-
is inevitable.
that's kind of where I am with that. I don't know, where it's going, but I'm hoping that effectively the structure is, here's something I learned, here's the imagination, and here's the play. And then, I don't know, and then here's maybe a funny impersonation of Arnold Schwarzenegger out the back of it for someone who doesn't feel particularly confident with their Schwarzenegger.
I think I'll Be Back or Will I is really funny.
Yes,
if I'm being really fussy, Get to the Chopper is from Predator, I believe.
Great. Okay, well, I need to know that.
Yeah.
See, I wouldn't have known that. I don't know Schwarzenegger.
And Predator's not, is Predator a robot?
Predator is
Predator
an alien.
is
An
alien.
alien.
Yeah.
No, well, that's important.
It's an important distinction.
I think as long as I can get something, there's got to be another Terminator phrase. I'm really determined to get no worries if not, but,
But I think you probably could just keep building off.
Wait,
I'll
isn't
be back.
Hasta La Vista from the Terminator?
Yeah, Hasta La Vista.
What
baby.
does Hasta
Yeah.
La Vista translate to?
It just, John Connor sort of tells him it's just like a way to shine on, like it's telling him how to
my
flirt.
phone there, but
Yeah.
I want to translate that to English.
I mean,
Hasta La
that will
Vista.
cost Google some
It's gonna-
water.
some water.
Yeah.
Shit.
You wanted to save the planet.
Damn it. All right. Well, they have to think something else. That point's out the window. Sorry, Nicolette.
I want to be the total simpleton at the start when you said one part of the AI generates and the other part criticize. Comes. I believe you said there was the word "cum" was in there, and as a Nazi Diner fan, that is always highlighted to me. Comes on the back of it. I think it comes on the back of it and criticizes it.
Yeah.
And it made me think that the generator is the girl AI, and then the boy AI is the one that comes on the back and criticizes
it. It's so binary. Like I see that.
AI is binary.
I saw that. Yeah, very true. AI is super binary, but I saw that more like, you know, the friend is looking over your shoulder while you're sending a text message.
Well,
being
I see
I don't know if I would
Yeah,
say it like
totally.
that.
Well,
Yeah,
I
that
see
might
it
be
as
misinterpreted.
the friend or the boyfriend who's negging you.
Yeah.
yeah.
Then you know what I mean? Like,
Well,
if
for me, it's just the inner.
This was just me going,
Voice.
where's the dick joke in here? And that was just, I'm a wordplay person. So
Sure.
the word "cum" was said. And like, let me show you my working out listening audience. The word "cum" was said. And I thought, could that be something? And it doesn't have to be.
No, it's fine. And, to be fair, I did have created a damp environment.
Indeed.
So-
Exactly. Yeah.
also too, I would be like, you could really have fun with it because there's so many robotic appliances and, you know, programs that we use. So like thinking about other, not just the Terminator, but like, what was that? Like the, you know, like the robot, the rocket clock or whatever from like Play School, like, you know, like all the, you know, like I always look at that as like the robot.
We're about to see that maybe Lauren is a robot right now because she may be short-circuiting.
But like you could apply that same rule about the robots and AI becoming anxious to like so many different well-known, you know, like appliances and robot
Roomba is
characters. The Roomba is great.
I mean, and maybe the Roomba is so strong that it just becomes.
Well,
about,
everyone
like, that
knows
being
what that is.
Well, I love the Roomba. I love the Terminator. What I love as well is just sort of the recognition that the robot is anxious, but then there also seem to be an indication. And I feel like this is where we get more Nicolette in this, is you then being concerned about them becoming anxious and taking your things away. It was right, the nurturer comes in of like, oh, I'd hate to bother you with more vacuuming today. It's like, no, that is their purpose, and the last thing we need is to be getting anxious about their anxiety as well. And I feel like anxiety fits so neatly into a midlife show about having to like make a certain amount of kilometers before a certain date. I assume that sort of maps onto it very neatly. I suppose the other thing I wanted to add was just how was that feeling of it sucking up all the medicine. Yeah, I think that's where my brain went, was
Like,
just
are
that.
you mad at it? Are you annoyed? Is that like your emotion?
No, I'm just saying. I think we need to prepare for it.
Yeah,
like there's a
sure,
lot of
okay.
chat about like upskilling.
Right.
You know,
That's where I was going to add to as well. Is like all those movies about these robots and AI getting feelings is usually love based. Like they want to know what love is, and they want to know all the sweet human emotions. But I like the idea that you're painting a world where these robots in these movies and TV shows and such are like, oh, I'm just
Downing
this is the worst.
Well,
You guys put up with this all the time.
Totally.
Yeah.
I had a joke in my show last year, a very short one, about how I hate being self-aware and how I would be like, you know, when you watch a movie about robots, they always are trying to achieve self-awareness, but that's when the movie ends. You never see them 5 or 10 years later down the track in their psychiatrist's office being like, am I the problem? Do you know what I mean? Like,
What does it mean for them? And maybe it's like, because I feel like I'm hitting, you know, all of that sense of they're coming, not coming for our jobs, they're coming from our mental
our
health plans.
psychiatrists.
There's potential. Yeah. I'm like, you don't want to have to you don't want to have to be on a wait list.
I'm already
for a
on a wait list for my psychologist.
You're like behind an air fryer.
But of course, that's so funny. That's an ending right there. That's an ending.
That's great.
And also you have the option as well, maybe the psychologist, as people already using those AI psychs online, is that, and there's also that idea that so much of the internet is just AIs talking to other AIs in comment sections, that you're the psychologist that you're waiting to see is also an AI that is spending all their time. And then I guess as well, the air fryer talking to the psychologist saying like, is there more to just doing chicken nuggies?
Well, for me, totally.
And the AI psychologist like, you think you're anxious? Like, I got to put up with this.
For me, the appliance thing is the limit, like the unlimited potential, but they are being asked to do one thing the whole time. It's like my microwave. I've never hit another button apart from intervals of 30 seconds.
Neither. That is absolutely true. There's so many other buttons I've never explored.
Defrost by weight, you know, it's a hard one.
Never. It always cooks on the outside.
But can you
piece
then,
of shit.
in terms of that one, you know, one purpose, does then that segue into mother? Does that, yeah.
What?
Hang on, sorry. I have to...
Well, because there's this idea of like, now that I'm a mum, is that like that becomes, my lot in life. Am I the air fryer?
No, you're talking to a woman who's pretty fully realised.
Oh, that's good. Oof. Well, that's great. Because I guess maybe you're talking to the audience member who is in that moment of feeling, what is there.
With complete and utter respect, that person does not have the time nor the energy to come and see my show. Like I'm well aware of that.
She's got some things to work through herself.
Yeah. Not to say that she wouldn't be welcome. Of course she would. But I'm like, I've been in that place and I'm not leaving the couch.
I don't know whether this is helpful as well, but I find something that I also talk about or have been thinking about a lot in my comedy is like how we have like over therapized the way that we speak and the way that we interact with each other now. And is there something, again, with like once the appliances and the air fryers and the Roombas and stuff have become, sentient or whatever, are they going to start doing to each other like we do? Like, oh my God, you're gaslighting me. Like, you know what I mean? You know how people are so quick
Well, I mean,
to,
it started with the pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
like there's a history there. There's a precedence for this kind of chat.
All right, we must segue into what Lauren has brought into class today for show and tell. What are you showing and telling?
Look, I don't know if it's as good as what Nicolette has brought
Hey,
in.
this is not a competition. But the listener will be in the comment section.
It's one of those things where I really like it because it tickles me, but I don't know if it's got real legs for.
Also, I started with the joke about farticus.
Yes, but
okay?
farting and fart, that's a universal experience. This is not that universal. So,
all right, hit us.
One of my, obviously within my show, I want to talk about things that really get me going kind of thing. And one thing that really irritates me of late, and for a long time, and I think this also comes from being an actor, is just how good looking actors and, performers have become. Like there's no representation for ugly people anymore, right? And I want to, I've got a little anecdote about how like I can't watch period dramas because, the number one illness in England in the 18th century was dysentery, which is shitting yourself to death. And I've never seen someone in Bridgerton have explosive diarrhea on the street. So I just feel like it's not realistic, like there's no historical accuracy. But then I go into this little anecdote about how I went to go see the Phantom of the Opera musical, which I think is a pretty famous, well enough known musical. And the Phantom, obviously the character, is meant to be this reclusive, ugly, hideous, strange, creative genius who doesn't see the light of day. And he was played by a 32-year-old man with like a six-pack and stubble. And I remember sitting there the whole time being like, this is narratively, this makes zero sense. Like it really pulled me out of the show because the whole time I kept thinking like the Phantom does not have the time to be working out like that. Like stalking, he stalks this.
I don't know, man. Those crypts, like there's a lot of stairs.
Well, that's what I thought
Yeah,
because I was
true.
like,
It might be happening naturally.
well, I thought, well, who am I to judge? Like maybe then I started to imagine like what the Phantom's like, workout would be. Like, does he have a Peloton in the corner? Like, is there an air fryer down there? The catacombs of Paris could be filled with, opportunities to do, high intensive interval training that I'm not aware of. But like, I'm trying to figure out like where the punchlines are because to me, I was like, it took me out of the drama because he's meant to be really, really ugly. And like, but if I met him at a bar, like, I don't think I'd stand a chance. And that annoys me. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's not enough representation for regular people.
Right. You walked into Phantom of the Opera going, I want to see a 2.
Yeah.
And you got
at
a
best.
10.
But also,
God,
Christine's into the Phantom as well, isn't she?
I don't know.
Oh, you think it's
Or is Christine in?
Stockholm
No, because
syndrome.
also because this is the thing is like is Christine because Christine's the love interest in that.
Well,
thing.
she's not really a love interest. She's 16.
Is she?
Yeah,
right.
she's 16. Like, this is almost sounds like Woody
But
Allen's biography.
the Phantom wants the Phantom's into her. He's
So
interested.
Christine thinks that he's her father. She thinks
Does she?
he's the
Oh, it's been a
ghost
while
of
since
her
I've seen it.
father. That's why she goes with him initially because she believes him to be the ghost of her dead father. So from he is
I thought it was
obsessed
a
and in
talent-
love with her
right.
for her talent and her beauty. She starts to fall in love with him, but I think you're right. I think it's a Stockholm syndrome.
Right,
kind of
sort
thing.
of a daddy issues situation.
Yeah, but yeah, so the whole premise was like, there's not enough time. Like as a full-time worker, like I could maybe squeeze in a gym workout like 60 minutes at the end of the day, maybe. But like I could see his six pack through his coat. You know what I mean? Like you can't. There's not enough time in the day to obsess over your macros and a 16-year-old kid.
So-
it just doesn't make sense.
I get that, but you as Lauren know that there's a musical theatre performer underneath the mask.
You have to double
So
check.
what are you saying that the Phantom of the Opera should be the kind of role where you just let go a bit?
Yeah.
Like you just
Well, yes, he's meant to be.
yeah,
very,
like if you were playing Madame Thénardier, you wouldn't be.
I would immediately go down the road and get myself a kebab. Do you know what I mean? Like I would not hesitate to method. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I am a musical theatre performer and I understand it is, it's a hard, you have to be in top shape, but also the Phantom, like you have to be an aerobically fit enough.
Yeah,
but
what's next? We see Quasimodo with perfect posture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
correct.
come
Like,
on.
where is the
Yeah.
line, as
Yeah.
the right wing would say? Like, how far are we going to go with this kind of thing? So, and I remember at the end of the show, like, because obviously it gets very dramatic and he threatens to kill her and all this and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole time I just kept thinking, you just need a bread roll. Like, you just need a carbohydrate. Like, you're making terrible decisions because you haven't.
Oh, you're just hangry.
You're just hungry. You've had too much protein.
I think there's so much joy in this bit. What I do want to sort of track though is where we start and where we end up. And
Yeah.
we start with there's not any ugly representation in Hollywood, so to
Yeah.
speak, in acting. What was there was a middle part before we got to Phantom as well.
Oh, about how, like, I can't watch period dramas.
Dysentery.
Yeah.
And I feel like almost dysentery could be a whole other section
Yeah,
because
I
that doesn't
think so
really come
too.
to about appearance.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
It's
fair.
more about historical accuracy.
Yeah,
'Cause I think that sort of throws off the chunk a little bit in terms of what we're sort of focusing on here.
Yep.
But what does come up here is that it just takes me out of it. It just
Yeah.
and I suppose maybe if we just highlight what you want, what you want, I want. If someone is playing a freak, they should be a freak. They should be.
Or they should go to some effort to look freakish.
And maybe we list as well.
It's
but
the way I feel about
yeah.
people who go to Halloween parties and look cute.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't want to tell people what to do, but it annoys me a little bit when, like, you have like a Halloween party or whatever. It's meant to be about ghosts and ghouls or whatever. And like, it's that trope of people showing up as like cheerleaders or whatever. And like,
But what if they're dead cheerleaders?
yeah, all right.
Yeah, but still got to be cute though as
Still
well.
gotta
It's
be
like
hot.
yeah.
Like I went to
Sure.
a bad taste party once and I was kind of irritated because a whole bunch of people just came in like double denim, but like still looked really adorable and cute. I came dressed as a 70-year-old grandmother with like a parachute tracksuit on, and I had like I did the whole thing. I was like, you want me to look like tacky and bad taste? I can do that. Like put some effort in. Do you know what I mean?
People always want to look fuckable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think I'm trying to find where the punchlines are with that. But I couldn't stop thinking about how does the Phantom, like, how do you get high protein diet in like Napoleonic France? Like, how do you like realistically maintain that lifestyle?
Yeah. I think any buff bods we're taken out of the moment going, but how does that work? Because I do think because you said there's some concern with like, is this a strong enough reference with Phantom of the Opera? I think it's very much.
I think it's famous.
Yeah,
enough.
very very famous. But you could also, because if you then are exploring that idea of these freaks ought to be freakish, is those are my words, is maybe listing some others. Like we don't want to see Frankenstein's monster has had abs
Like
grafted
Frankenstein
on
should not
and-
be played by Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not appropriate.
but that is what's sort of happening is
Yeah,
like
watch
A24 next cinemas.
What do we think, Nicolette, in terms of like, because also there are so many options for this bit in terms of the
Yeah.
journey that we go on. What are you gravitating most toward?
I think there is a little bit of option paralysis here at this point.
Yeah.
But I think if you can identify that we're Lauren the sensible, recognizing that, of course you recognize that there is a fit musical theatre
practical
performer who's maybe
requirement,
thinking
yes.
about what their next show is going to be.
Yeah, where is your suspension of
like,
disbelief?
Yeah, but also make some effort. Like, are you telling me that there is XYZ downstairs? Because that's where my brain is.
Yep.
Like then, because I think that's actually the fun and the thrill of the chase
Yes.
is to be like, I don't know. I've never played an organ.
No.
Like maybe it is.
I've never been to the dungeons underneath Paris.
Drummers
I don't
are really
know.
fit. I imagine like you got your pedals, you got your arms.
He's rowing that boat as well.
He's
Got to
on a
row that
boat.
boat, I guess. Yeah,
He's
that's
dropping
true.
that chandelier.
Like I'm happy to be
He strangles a lot of people. That's a big upper body workout.
Yeah,
so.
I think there's I'm happy to see you can maybe, if you want to go down this path of like convincing yourself that he does deserve to look like that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
But maybe not, you know.
And because this is in a bigger show, and as we were talking about with Nicolette before about where are you in this as well, is sort of going, oh, I'm intrigued to know how you feel about appearance and how you feel about that whole world as well.
Totally.
Well, for me, it's like, well, if I got famous enough to have a biopic made of me when I die, like I don't want to be played by a 21-year-old, you know, actor/model. I want to be played by, you know, like the Meryl Streeps of the world. I want a good actor who looks like a regular person, you know? That's
elephant in the room, devil's
You're never
advocate
gonna find
is
that. No, music theatre, mate.
if I can play devil's advocate, you are an attractive person. So I think the challenge there is to like make the audience see you the way that you feel like you are seen how you feel about appearance and your appearance. Because sometimes when people talk about appearance stuff and where they're looking at much in the same way that you're looking at the fandom and he's going, I'm a freak. You on stage almost subtextually in this bit seem to be saying like, I'm not a supermodel, but people would still be looking and go, oh, you're a very attractive person. What are you struggling with, I guess, is the question.
Well, I guess because it is like a midlife show and it is a bit of it is about how confronting it is to like watch your body age and change, and that's quite full on. And I think, like I said before, there's that joke there about he is absolutely set up to be very hideous and terrifying even. But if we matched on Tinder, like would he swipe left on me? I don't think so. I think he's way out of my league and that upsets me.
Yeah. Were you going to see a show where the male lead would sleep with you?
Yes.
You would not have to. It would be a pity fuck.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden they're giving you a pity fuck.
Yeah.
You want the Phantom to be lucky to have you. You know what I mean? Like you are a hideous monster of a man.
Correct.
And yet he's like, no,
you know, there's always
you.
like, what do they say in a relationship? There's always like the flower and then the water kind of thing. You're like, I want to be the flower. Like with my relationship if I was to be in a relationship with the Phantom, like I should be the hot one. Do you know what I mean?
He should be wanting to chase
the
me.
chaser.
It's like,
Yeah.
Really? You're going for Christine? She's 16. She doesn't know what she's doing.
Totally.
I've lived.
Yes.
Take me, Phantom.
I mean, the Phantom was played by Michael Crawford on West End when he was like 55.
Yeah, that's proper.
Appropriate.
We want an older Phantom. Yeah.
You're not. Also, I was like, he's too young to be haunting anything. At 32, you don't know enough about life. Like,
I don't know. I feel like I've had some 32-year-olds.
when I was 32, I was still a dumb bitch. What is he haunting apart from Vitamins Plus at Westfield? Do you know what I mean?
If we want someone to, if we maybe can bring ourselves into this bit by going like, you know, who's really going to disturb a beautiful masquerade ball is a woman in her 40s turning up to be like, what's all this then?
Listen, fuckers.
Life isn't easy.
I've got something to say.
Masks off, everybody. Let's be honest about ourselves. The Phantom comes in and no one's even afraid anymore. They've already left.
No one's afraid of him. Everyone's just like, oh my God, is he busy later? Am I going to give you my phone number?
Hey guys, thank you so much for making the time to come on the show.
Thank you.
Nicolette, where can people find your stuff?
I'm on Instagram because I'm 41. I'm Nick __ Minstergram. It's pretty stunning. Took the rest of the day off after that. But yeah, I'm around. I'll be working on a couple of light end shows, so there'll be stuff next year, and obviously touring Adelaide and Melbourne next year.
So exciting. Lauren?
I am also on Instagram and TikTok, though I only check in sporadically on TikTok because it is becoming quickly a space that I don't feel is appropriate for me. But both of my username on both is at livelaughLauren __. I am doing my show Chihuahua in Melbourne and maybe a few other cities, but I've just bought a house, not to brag. So I'm deciding whether that
unrelatable.
Something really relatable. I'm not sure. I'm just still making a decision as to whether that is a smart decision.
I get it. And just to sort of leave us on this note, coming back around to where we started, which we love to bookend, is that idea of coming to comedy, feeling like you're coming to comedy a little later. What would you say to people who are starting out, quote unquote, a little bit later?
Oh, wow.
Goodness.
That's a really good, just ask yourself why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you need to, I would also say that to regardless of what you.
When you're coming to it.
Yeah, when you're coming to it.
I think, look, I think you're right. you shouldn't worry too much about the age thing. I think I did initially. I don't anymore. But I would say to someone coming in late, I actually look at it as a good thing because, you know, comedy can be fraught with anxiety and, you know, self-doubt and wondering if you're good enough, whatever. And there is a lot of beauty in being older when you come to it because you're much more sure that because everyone has something different to offer. We're just, I think as an older comic, I don't want to keep saying older, but as a comic, you know, at 40 years old, I think I'm just a bit better at staying in my lane now and feeling comfortable with that. I don't feel the need to emulate other people anymore. And I think that's a really positive side. So if that is something you want to do and you want to make that jump, just know that you might find you've got that buoyancy for yourself.
Completely. And I think it's everything about your life that doesn't involve comedy is that what will be infinitely more interesting and more relatable to audience.
Totally. Being a well-rounded human being. And as you said earlier, Nicolette, feeling that compulsion.
Yeah.
Like, I need this. I should be here. I love this.
It should be fun.
It should.
Fingers
absolutely.
crossed. Thanks again, guys. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Delightful. I hope we all got something out of it.
Yeah.
Definitely.